Welcome back to the KAHI Afternoon News. Good afternoon. I am Casey Freela. Pleased to be joined by Congressman Tom McClintock for our weekly conversation. And Tom, I was actually just listening to another interview you did on another station today talking about Corey Lewandowski's congressional testimony about the impeachment inquiry into President Trump's 2016 campaign. Some very interesting comments, and I was just hope you could kind of share your sentiment here with the listeners and anybody that's been following this trial. I don't know if confused is the word, but there's so many different things going on, and I think you added a lot of clarity with what you were saying.
Well, I think it's this we've been plagued by this false, monstrous lie that Donald Trump is a agent of the Russian government. It's been going on for 3 years now, and we're now discovering that that whole narrative began with several high-ranking Obama officials in the intelligence and justice agencies. They took a dossier that was paid for by the Clinton campaign that they knew was a lie, and used that. Plus, they actually fed this information to George Papadopoulos through Joseph Mifsud, who they claimed was a Russian operative. It turns out Mifsud was not a Russian operative. He was a Western intelligence asset, had a long history of CIA involvement, and they used that information that they developed and fed through him to start an investigation on Russian collusion. And then they leaked that the existence of that investigation to the press in order to influence the 2016 election. It failed to do that. It failed to influence the election. Donald Trump still won, and when it failed, that became the insurance policy that Peter Strzok talked about in his emails that have since become public to undermine the presidency. And by the way, those conversations took place in the office of Andrew McCabe, who is now under criminal referral by the Inspector General for perjury.
So this kind of tears at the fabric of what our country is based on, right? I mean, talking about and the quote is, "You're more concerned about our government using terrifying powers to interfere in our election." That is horrifying, because you think as an average person, you go to work, you raise your family, and you get to vote every 4 years to have the person you want in power kind of lead our country. And if the government is doing something to interfere in people's perceptions, or even maybe the way that they end up making their votes, that is a scary, scary thought.
Well, that's exactly right. We entrust the most terrifying powers that our government has to these agencies, intelligence and justice. They have the power to completely ruin your life. They have the power to throw you in jail, to bankrupt you, to threaten your family, and those powers are reserved for the purpose and entrusted for the purpose of protecting our freedoms as Americans. And what we're starting to discover is those very powers were turned against our American democracy. They were used for political purposes, and that by itself is a direct threat to our most fundamental freedoms as Americans and to our most fundamental institutions of our democracy.
I was also reading on your website the Impeachment Investigation Procedures Committee markup, and in your statement, you were talking about if the majority wants to exercise the House's power of impeachment, you just have to ask the House to do so. Instead, it feels more like it's just political wrangling so people can go tell their voters and the people in their districts, yes, I'm doing something about it if it fits their narrative, or no, I'm not doing something about it if it fits theirs.
Well, that's exactly right. The Democrats are caught between a rock and a hard place on this. The majority of their constituency has been clamoring for impeachment since day one. And by the way, the pretext they're now using is just ridiculous. That Donald Trump told Corey Lewandowski, this is what the hearing was about yesterday, not to shut down the investigation, but to go tell Jeff Sessions he ought to do a press conference and say, look, I was the campaign chairman. There was no Russian involvement in our campaign. I know because I was there. And the president is being treated very unfairly and did nothing wrong. That's all that he asked, and that's what they are using to try to invoke the power of impeachment, which is literally 535 people nullifying the constitutional election of the President of the United States, a decision that was made by the American people. And they've got a significant constituency on the left clamoring to do that. So they're grasping at straws. On the other hand, They won a lot of congressional districts with people promising not to do that, promising to be problem solvers, not troublemakers. And yet it is those very Democrats who are supposed to be moderate and willing to cross party lines and reach across the aisle that are empowering the radical left. So the problem they've got is, as I said, they want their impeachment and deny it too. And the way they do that is by doing these so-called impeachment hearings in committee. But the committee has no jurisdiction over impeachment. The power of impeachment is entrusted by our Constitution to the Congress as a whole and to the House of Representatives to begin those proceedings. The only way that power can be transferred is by resolution of the whole House, and that has been standing precedent for the 240 years our country has existed. The House has to pass a resolution delegating that power of impeachment to the Judiciary Committee. It has not done so. And all that they have to do, if they were actually serious about formally beginning an impeachment, all they have to do is offer a resolution on the House floor. It's a privileged resolution. It has to be taken up in expedited fashion. That the House delegates the authority of impeachment to the Judiciary Committee. It's not done so because that would force every Democrat to vote on that and put them in a difficult position between their constituencies and between the radical left that controls their party. So that's the game they're playing. No doubt that they want to, but they are also recognizing there would be a heavy price to pay with moderate voters across the country if they actually did. So they're having their impeachment and denying it too. That's why I dared them to go ahead and pass that resolution if you're really serious about it.
And I guess
I double dog dared them.
Right. And my last question on it, does this just kind of sit in limbo and go away with the news cycle, or do you think that there will be more action taken and maybe eventually some kind of resolution? I don't know.
I think very shortly now, within perhaps the next couple of days, the next shoe is going to drop. The Inspector General has already completed his report and given it to the Attorney General. At some point in the next few days, I would expect that to become public. This is over the use of the phony Steele dossier and the disinformation campaign by to launch a phony investigation. Specifically, it is the lying to the FISA court, the secret court, in order to obtain warrants to spy on the opposition campaign. My guess is there are going to be some serious criminal referrals coming out of that report. And then right behind that, you have the U.S. Attorney's investigation of the whole thing, not just the Justice Department misconduct, but also the intelligence agencies. And I think that is going to start to paint a much clearer picture of how this country could be consumed with such a monstrous and outrageous lie for 3 years that our president's actually a puppet of a foreign government. That's the lie they created. That's the lie they pursued through our intelligence agencies and our justice agencies, and that is the lie that I think is going to be laid bare in these reports. So there's a lot more on this coming, and we all have to pay attention to it, because if those powers to ruin people's lives can be used for political purposes, that strikes at the very heart of our democratic institutions and our democratic traditions.
We've been visiting with Congressman Tom McClintock here on KAHI. Tom, as always, we appreciate your time. Thanks for being on with us, and we'll look forward to talking again soon.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We'll take a quick break and be right back.